Hey, hey.
There it is, the hey, hey. The infamous
You know, we used to do
famous.
this thing like, good morning, and you'd say, I'm Greg.
I'm Julie,
No, you'd say, I'm Greg, and I'd say, I'm Julie.
but you kind of left me hanging there in the
know,
explanation,
right?
so I didn't know what to do.
And then we'd say Gorman. Either way, hey, good morning. Welcome to today's broadcast. We are super excited to jump right in
Yeah,
and unpack some powerful principles that are going to help you live for what's most important.
I think today's subject matter is going to be very pertinent to every person on planet Earth. So if you're jumping in just now, we're glad to have you. And if you're watching it as a recording, we're also glad to have you. If it blesses you, what we're going to talk about today, or it encourages you, don't be afraid to spread the word, so to speak.
Yeah, share it forward.
There you go. There you go. So, Jules, why don't you kick us off this morning? What are we talking about?
Yep.
And what was it that kind of brought about this thought? What
All
caused
right.
us to begin to think
Yeah,
that this is what we needed to talk about?
we've been watching, and in our own life, we find this pace, like it seems like this franticness to run from one activity to another, even at times when maybe we aren't necessarily in a hurry. And so, one of the things that we've learned is that rhythm is so important. The ability to run at a sustainable pace and manage for what's most important is vital for the health of any relationship. And so if you're finding yourself running from one activity to the next, feeling at the end of the day like you shortchanged it, or asking yourself, where the heck did this day go to? Or maybe at the end of the day you're thinking, shoot, I missed out on quality connection once again. That's why we're going to talk about what we're talking about today, because there are actually a few steps that we've learned and that we're re-implementing in our life on a daily basis to be able to
Continually. Like, this is something we have to revisit
Yeah.
as a discipline, really, in our life to help us, because we have a tendency to kind of take things, a lot of different things on. But I think, another thing as we move into this that I want to encourage y'all just kind of out of the gates is to begin to challenge your own thinking about the busyness in your life, or even the stress. I was talking with a client just within the last week, and about this particular client's habit of being stressed out.
Right.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's a thought process, and sometimes I think that it's a choice as to whether we really are. It's not that we choose to be stressed out, but I think sometimes we go through really intense seasons.
Yep.
And we get used to that adrenaline, and unwittingly we actually perpetuate that adrenaline
Ugh.
effect in our life.
Right.
And we hate it, but we're not sure what to do about it because it's become a habit, which means that it's moved on the subconscious level. And I think sometimes our busyness is exactly that. I think
Yep.
that sometimes legitimately we're busy. I'm not speaking against somebody who's got a busy life.
But
okay?
sometimes it's just a habit in our mind. It's a conditioning that we put in there to think about, oh, we've got to run to, and that's what I was saying.
Even if we're not.
Even
busy.
if we're not.
Yeah.
So how do you live for what's most important? We're going to share 3 steps as the jet flies overhead, right?
Airplane.
Yeah, there we go. 3 ways to, we're going to unpack that of how to live with intentionality and a healthy rhythm. And the very first thing that we can say is slow down, right? Slow down and understand your own rhythm. We're going to talk about some questions that you can ask for reflection. But as I was thinking about slowing down, I immediately thought about our son Joshua, who was running in cross country. He would run the mile distance. And I never could understand this because I am not a runner. I kind of like your brother. He says, the only way I'm going to be running is if there's a bear chasing me, right? So the point being, though, is Joshua was a runner, and one of the things that I love that he did is he had this conditioning to start at a slower pace than what he was going to finish the race at.
Mm-hmm.
He actually had a conditioning process of keeping that rhythm, and he understood the rhythm, and he understood where he wanted to be at a certain point in the race. And if he was too quick ahead of that, he might actually need to slow down to be able to maintain the pace. And so he learned the healthy rhythm. And so for us, as a couple, I often tell myself, slow down, Julie. And I ask myself pertinent questions like, is what I'm doing right now, are the practices that I'm practicing, are the thoughts that I'm thinking, are the habits that I'm disciplining myself to, moving me closer to my desired outcome, or actually hindering? And when I find myself in this rat race of just running from one thing to the next, I know I need to slow down and gain perspective. So the very best thing I think we can do is to slow down, understand our rhythm, and begin to ask ourselves those pertinent questions.
I love that set of questions that you just asked. You know, is basically, is what I'm doing, is what I'm thinking and what I'm doing right now leading me to where I really want to be?
Right.
And you know, when we first say something or somebody tells me something like slow down, I'm like, that's freaking great. Thanks for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for
Yeah,
telling
you
me
don't
to
know what
slow
I have to
down.
do.
Right. How the frick do I slow down? You know, and so I think again we've got to pull this down into what can we do and what can we pull from this lesson, right? And so I think what you're suggesting, what we're suggesting, is that you carve out some time in your day, hopefully a few times a day and several times throughout the week, to ask yourself those questions,
Right.
and then adjust your behavior, because sometimes we've just lost focus on really where it is and all of the urgent stuff. Stephen Covey taught a lot of lessons on this years ago,
right.
but all the urgent stuff that's up in our face can begin to sabotage us. And so sometimes we can't necessarily just slow down,
Right.
but we can slow down long enough to gain perspective if we choose to. And so we encourage you to carve that time out periodically throughout your day and kind of just do a look back and say, did what I do so far today, is it going to lead me to where I want to be?
Yeah, I think the second thing too is, as you're thinking about what's most important, and you're asking yourself, am I moving towards that or am I not moving towards that, that you have actually helped me tremendously. And one of the things that you taught me and encouraged me early in life is that life is not ever, or at least rarely is it ever, in a perfect balance, right? This elusiveness that we think life is a balance, and what you shared is that life is a rhythm. And I love that thought because
Can I
Yeah.
talk to that just a second? So just for a little bit more backdrop on that, when we think about life in balance, it just leaves us to be disappointed all the time. And in self-judgment, because life is rarely at a balance, is it? You know,
right.
Sometimes your health requires more of a focus in your life. Sometimes your faith requires more focus. Sometimes your relationship. Sometimes, you know, so any given moment,
Yep.
there's one.
sometimes our work or ministry takes a little bit more of a precedence, and we have to tell our kids, we'll say, hey, you know what? We're going to be entering into a busy season. You guys are priority, but we've got some activities that we need to do.
Go.
Yeah. So it's really looking again from that perspective of every life domain, whether it be family, personal, career, faith, or your community, all of those different domains of asking yourself, okay, have I spent too much in this one part of my life and neglected these other areas of my life? Because the one thing that we know about seasons, or that seasons are good, right? It allows the earth to rest. It allows the earth to bring forth fruit. But if we stay in winter season too long, or if we're in harvest mode too long, eventually we're not able to.
It throws
sustain.
things cockywampus.
It does.
You know what I mean? It really does. You can go to Antarctica and figure that out really quick. You know, it's like,
I don't want to go to Antarctica.
I don't really want to either.
Right.
But I would like to go, but I wouldn't want to stay.
Right.
Which is exactly the point.
So it's asking, have I made concessions in my life, living to what's good instead of for what's great, right? Am I just living for one area of my life, or am I considering every domain of life? And have I neglected any of those? And again, if you're in this one place too long, and usually we find that we can get sidetracked by work or ministry, and we start putting all of our focus and energy there, and we neglect our health, or we neglect our family, or we neglect our spouse. And so it's just looking at those different domains and saying, is there anywhere that I need to reprioritize to get back that healthy rhythm of life?
So the difference very quickly between managing for a rhythm in life versus managing for balance is elusive. There's probably nobody watching or that will watch this that says that their life's in perfect balance right now. But I do believe that rhythm is kind of a God thing. You know what I mean? I've heard people teach, that the whole earth works in a rhythm.
Right.
There is day
Yep.
and night. There is, waves come in sets. I'm a surfer,
Right.
and so waves come in sets, and the sets come in sevens, which is very interesting. So there's this natural rhythm, and I think that if we observe our own selves, our life, what we can do is we can begin to discover what rhythm works for us.
Right.
And then
Don't ignore it, right?
Right.
Because it's easy to justify, oh well, I'll get to that I'll get to that when. And sometimes we just have to say, you know what, I'm changing the rhythm up because it's getting really clunkety clankety.
Yeah. We need to find how to get back into rhythm, and
Right.
it may be the process to get back into rhythm may be just a little bit different than what it was in a different season. So it gives you permission to be able to move within the rhythms of your life, in order to keep that timing. And you mentioned something there, babe, that I think we should probably just, as an honorable mention, you talked about the difference between good and great in
Yep.
our life. And is what I'm doing, am I sacrificing
What's great?
what's great for the sake of what's good? And it just occurs to me that I think in a lot of my life I did that. I didn't intentionally do that, but I definitely gave a lot of my life to some very good, very noble things that I was
Yeah.
spending myself for. But the old adage is, and it's become a familiar one, is that good really is the enemy of great. And so that sounds all cool and cliche, but when we begin to process that and how it really works in our life, there's something that's really important that we have a clear understanding of in order to leverage that in our day-to-day living, isn't there?
Yeah.
And that is, what is the difference between what's good and what's great? And I have found that there's only one way for me to really know the difference between what's good or really, really good versus what is great in my life. And the one key element that helps me to discern the difference between the two is my life vision, my life
Right.
purpose.
That's good, babe.
In our case, our marriage purpose, as this is a marriage and family program. So, when I understand purpose, when I have direction, when I have vision, when I know where I'm going, then I can easily use that as a compass to discern whether something is just good or whether it's really great. Is it moving me rapidly towards that, or is it just something that is a noble thing that I can
Right.
put my hand to,
Right.
but it doesn't really fit within the real sweet spot in my life?
It's good. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So number 3, final for today, is to stay encouraged and keep practicing doing what's right. I love the idea of, if you plant a green bean, what are you going to get?
Green beans.
If you plant corn, you're going to get corn. If you plant tomatoes, you're going to hopefully get some tomatoes. I love tomatoes, by the way. All that to say is that if you continually do the right things, you can't help but reap that result.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where that scripture says, don't grow weary in doing good, for in due time you will reap the harvest. And so when we think about living to what's great, right, living for what we say matters most, we have to know what that matters most is, what that great is, and then just simply use that time for reflection, making sure we're planting the right seeds. And we can't ignore, we can't pretend that we're gonna grow corn or grow green beans or grow tomatoes, even better yet, right? If we're planting a bunch of thistles, if we're planting a bunch of weeds, we can't expect to harvest what we want if we're not intentionally doing the right things and practicing planting the right seeds.
And so, when we pause long enough, which is where we started talking about,
Yep.
when we pause long enough to assess what really is most important, I think you're probably going to find what we've found, that relationships are most important. And so it's easy to kind of blaze through life with all of our different agendas and get busy, and even sometimes we think for the purpose of building relationship,
Right.
and we let sort of the means of getting there get watered down, I suppose. And so I just want to encourage you to remember what is most important, and truly don't grow weary in doing good. This is a law, if you plant corn, you're not going to get tomatoes out of that corn seed.
Right.
So as you're meandering and or working very purposely through your day and the rest of your week, yeah, I just want to encourage you to ask yourself, one, how are you handling the relationships in your life? And then two, are you planting seeds in the way that you respond in maybe a tense situation,
Ooh, that's good.
or in traffic, or
You
at the
had to bring
grocery
that one up,
store,
yeah.
or well, that was for me. You know, in a way that you're planting seeds that you want to reap a harvest from. Do you want to reap a harvest from the seeds that you're planting? And if not, it's all good. We all get out of alignment. You're not an evil person. You just got a little sideways, and we all do that from time to time. So reach in your pocket and get the seeds that you really want to start planting, and start planting them much more intentionally.
All right, so for your takeaways today, slow down, take time to reflect, ask some pertinent questions of what matters the most. Second, recognize and remind yourself that life is a rhythm, right? Discover that rhythm, pace yourself, and make sure you're safeguarding for what does matter the most. And then third, stay encouraged. Just don't grow weary in doing good. Keep planting the right seeds. Keep planting the right habits. And in due time, what you're going to see is that you're living for what matters most. And we're never going to have any regrets if we do that.
Yeah, right on.
All right, we'll catch you next week.
You bet. Have a great day, y'all.